Hello everybody, it's Favorite West Virginia in space here, and one of the things that RPGs have a somewhat reputation for is having those players who want to make their character as overpowered as possible to take on any threat of the game simply without trying very hard. And granted, these players do exist, and they're somewhat held back by how overpowered the game allows you to make a character at level 1, which varies from game to game. But what really holds them back is the fact that most RPGs have some equivalent of a leveling or XP system that simply doesn't allow a character to have overpowered abilities at the start of a game. You just can't get the end game abilities at the start of a game, so your characters are often held back by that. So that's why to make truly overpowered builds, you have to wait till the end game to really, because simply designed foes are just more designed for those end game threats, and you just are simply not powerful enough no matter how OP you make your starting level character. But that's the thing that holds them back, isn't it? Having to wait till the end game of leveling, having to work your way up there, like everyone else. No matter how special you make your special little character, they're still not powerful enough to take on end game threats at the start. But what if you could just skip all those levels? What if instead you could, within a couple of sessions, go from a complete starting character, no different than any other, to a complete endgame threat so powerful that you literally challenge the gods of that setting? Well, I happen to know an RPG that lets you do that, which may have the most overpowered ability of any game I've ever seen. Let me show you it. The RPG in question today is actually the Scion 2nd Edition RPG published by White Wolf / Onyx Path Publishing. Now, of course, this RPG already favors some very powerful characters, given the fact you play the children of the Greek, Norse, Egyptian, etc., gods. So obviously, you're starting out pretty powerful because you're based on Hercules, kind of. And it only goes up from there since you can literally join the pantheon of your respective mythology, just like Hercules. So obviously, you can get quite powerful in this game already. But what stops you from just ascending at level 1 is the legend system. See, in this game, all player characters have a legend score. You start out with 0 if you start at the origin level, 1 if you start at the hero level, and 5 if you start out at the demigod level. So obviously, as you can imagine, you gain levels of legend to grow your power. The more levels of legend you have, the more powerful you get, and once you get 9 dots of legend, you become a full-fledged god in that pantheon, although a minor one. So, obviously, the next question is, how do you gain legend? Well, you do this by, as a group of players, completing 3 deeds. A group deed, which is something you do as a group. A short deed, which is something that can be completed in 1 session. And very notable for this video, a long deed, which is considered a story arc in this game. Like a season of a TV show or cartoon, or like an anime or something like that. So this can take several sessions just to complete the long deed. The group deed and the short deed could be theoretically, especially the short deed, completed very quickly. So, naturally speaking, it's the long deed that holds you back from just ascending in just a couple of games. So the question does, of course, remain, how long does this take? Well, once again, it could take quite a long time, or relatively short time, depending on how your GM decides to run it. But at the end of the day, it still takes time, and it's going to take way more than a couple of sessions. So, of course, that's a natural limiting mechanic, and it lets you really experience the feel of the game and have an epic sense of you slowly gaining in power and going on epic legends like the heroes of old. So how is this overpowered? Well, none of this is overpowered as it's all balanced. All characters play by these same rules, so you have to raise level the same way, you have to do it all the exact same way, so it's balanced because no matter what you do, how you gain legend is exactly the same for everyone else. Except for, you see, Scion / player characters who take the Elder God Pantheon from Master of the Mythos book, or to those less knowledgeable in Lovecraft terms, the Cthulhu Pantheon, can basically break this rule. You see, every character has access to certain purviews based on what god they come from, what relics they have, and all that jazz. But based on what pantheon you come from, you get a specific one unique to that pantheon. So, like, the Greek gods have their own one, the Egyptians have their own one, etc., etc. And one particular boon in the purview of the Elder God Pantheon is completely busted because it breaks the legend system. It's called Disturbing Visions. Basically, what it does is that it replaces your short-term deed, as I mentioned before, something that can be completed within 1 session, and replace it with a task that has to be doable within that session of when the character uses it. Once they do this task, which requires a moderate level of difficulty and requires at least 1 success roll to be done at some point during the whole thing that the GM has to come up with, then the character will complete the quest and they will gain 1 dot of awareness and 1 dot of legend. Now, the awareness is a whole thing on its own. That's not really what we're here to talk about today, but the legend one is important. You gain 1 dot of legend. This is important because you completely circumvent having to go through the group and long-term deed, meaning that every session you use this power, rules as written, you should be able to gain a dot of legend. Now, of course, player characters are not perfect, so it's entirely possible the GM could try to design something that you could do within that session that takes a little bit longer. And it does say you shouldn't be able to use this power more than once a session, so there is a slight room for error. But the thing is, the thing doesn't go away if you don't beat it within the session. It still digs up with the next session. And the thing is, it's incredibly powerful because, like I said, a long-term deed is like a whole story arc. A short-term deed is just what you do in one session. And this just applies to you. And this thing doesn't have like a cooldown or some kind of cost to using the power. It only works once per session. That's its only mechanical downside. There is theoretically a group downside that now your character is off doing something completely irrelevant to the rest of the group, but that seems like small potatoes compared to what you get instead. You see, you can get this power at the hero rank, which is like where many people start the game off, since Origin is somewhat like almost like a prelude kind of thing. So here's the thing, right? The moment you hit hero level, or tier, whatever you want to call it, you can instantly take this power, and then every session you can do this quest that you get from the Elder Gods. You gain a point of legend, you grow more powerful, and here's the thing, right? Once you get to hero level, you only have 1 dot of legend, meaning that you only have to do this 8 times, 8 sessions, and you will literally have achieved godhood, rules as written, because the GM can't just say no to this unless the GM kind of fiats the rules. So that's why it has to be the most powerful, because you could literally reach the end game of this game, because they haven't even published this God book for 2nd edition yet. That doesn't even exist yet. That you can literally hit further than the game has actually been published for yet, before the other characters have even gotten their 2nd dot of legend. That makes it single-handedly the most overpowered ability, because it lets you reach the end game before the other characters have even got to the demigod tier. And the thing is, I don't know if this ability will somehow not work once God tier comes out, but it doesn't really matter, because if you start or reach hero or demigod tier, you can still take this power and still proceed to absolutely just speedball the other characters who just cannot do anything to counter this. There's no other way for other players to take this, so that's why it makes it single-handedly the most overpowered ability in all of RPGs, in my opinion. But of course, that's just my thoughts. What do you think about this? Do you think this is the most overpowered ability in all RPGs? Or do you think that I'm wrong, there's something better? I'd love to hear in the comments. So please, comment down below, give your likes, thoughts, and opinions. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Yeah? Hey, why don't you hit that sub button? You're gonna become a subscribble. Get to see my content quicker. Wouldn't that be nice? I bet so.